Welcome to Cropcast Conversations, a podcast that draws on experience and advice from people working in the arable industry to cover a range of interesting topics.
It does provide, though, a platform for us as an assurance scheme to be able to go out and say, our farmers are growing this fantastic product to this exacting standard, because there's our scheme, there's what they have to do, and that is what they're doing as a baseline, with many of the growers actually doing so much more on top of that. So we actually can, through what we are doing, evidence how the product has grown, and I think that's really, really critical.
I'm Mark Gibbs, and I'll be here every other month with a new episode. And in today's episode, I'm very pleased to have as my guests Teresa Dougall and John Hutcheson, SQC, Scottish Quality Crops, to discuss the work they do in the combinable crop supply chain. Welcome, guys. How are you?
Great. Thanks, Mark, and thanks for having us.
That's great. I'll come back to you in a second for a bit of an intro. So really, a lot of our Cropcast conversations are looking at supply chain issues in the arable sector in Scotland, and being a migrant into the country, I came up from England about 5 years ago from a practical farming background, working on estates down there. I'm all ears for today's podcast on the work that you do at SQC with the assurance scheme and how it works within the supply chain. So great to have you on. Thanks for joining us. And perhaps for those listeners that don't know you so well, Teresa, would you like to perhaps introduce yourself and give a bit of background of how you came to work with SQC?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. It's been an interesting journey actually before I came to Scottish Quality Crops, because as it's always been put, I'm a townie. So born, raised in Ayr, still staying Ayr. However, my whole career, so over 30 years now, has actually been working within the agricultural and rural business sector. So, and the majority of it as well has actually been with membership organisations. So it has allowed me to actually build up a lot of contacts and a lot of knowledge across the full industry. So yeah, I've now been with Scottish Quality Crops for nearly 4 years actually. It's been a very quick 4 years, really interesting 4 years. And it's one of those topics as well, assurance, that some people love it, some people loathe it. I have to say, I thoroughly enjoy working within the sector. And as such as well, it's allowed me to continue to work with farmers, which it's fantastic. Yeah, it's lovely getting out and about all the time and getting to meetings and meeting all the stakeholders, the farmers, and actually seeing what is happening on the ground, and also being able to help them.
Yeah. So you're managing director, Teresa, and there's quite a structure. We'll come on to that later. Joining us as well is John. And John, your chair. Am I right in thinking of SQC?
That's right, Mark. I've been chair for 2 years now. I've been on the board of SQC for over 15 years. And I am myself a third generation arable farmer at Hutcheson, just south of Dunfermline. We grow the usual range of combinable crops with a team of 4 here. So I've been involved in arable production all my career. My other real passion in the industry is cooperation, and I have been involved in co-ops for a while. I chaired Tayforce Machinery Ring for a while. I'm also vice chair of Grainco, which is a grain marketing cooperative based in the north of England. But really, it's all about working together and getting growers to work as a co-op and to make ourselves a bit stronger because of that. So cooperation really goes to the heart of most of the things I do. So also, Mark, I was privileged to chair SAOS for 3 years, And I think SAOS is such a fantastic organisation, encouraging cooperation in Scotland in the rural sector, and does some wonderful work. And I'm very proud to have done that.
So is SQC a cooperative in the cooperative sense of the word? We have members. You've obviously got directors, and you've got a hub of advisors from the industry that you sort of integrate with. But in the way that we think of machinery rings and sort of membership to SAOS, is SQC part of that cooperative landscape?
Yes, SQC, now Scottish Quality Crops, is a cooperative. It was changed to a co-op in 2020, and the co-op members consist of the organisations that sit on the board. So we have various representation across the industry, and these are the actual members of the co-op. Our growers, of which there are nearly 3,000, are the growers that are part of our assurance scheme, but the co-op consists of the representation throughout the industry.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. I mean, would you like to run through those members? Because it's quite a widespread and great to have that sort of diversity in that cooperative.
Certainly, our members consist of, in no particular order, there's the UK Flour Millers Association. We have Scottish Agronomy, which in itself is another cooperative. We have the SWA, Scottish Whisky Association. We have MAGB, the Maltsters Association of Great Britain, NFUS, AIC, Agricultural Industries Confederation, and SRUC. So you guys are on the board as well. And that gives us a really good cross-section of our industry. And there is, within that board, there is significant farmer involvement, and farmers really sit at the heart of our governance system, which is very important for our scheme to have significant grower input.
Yes, because of course, I know Fiona Bonnet, I think, is technical director with you. Is that right? And David Robbs is a colleague of mine. And also, we've actually had Julian South on in the previous podcast talking about the Maltsters Association. So it becomes quite a circular network.
But very important, Mark, that we have this fantastic representation across the industry, because our standards cover the whole range of crop destinations, and so it's important that everyone really has the ability to feed into the process and the governance system that we have.
Yeah. Well, we'll come on to that in a bit, because obviously there's the guidance comes from people like that in terms of maltsters or distillers, etc., and agronomy partners. If we go back a step, how did SQC come into being? It's got a sort of 20-30 year history, hasn't it, from its original foundings?
It has. Well, SQC was founded as SQC, which is Scottish Quality Cereals, in 1994, and it was done in response to really a request from the distilling sector, our whisky industry, effectively, and it really follows on from the Food Safety Act that came in at the time, and there was a requirement to really show that what we were doing on the farm was safe, as the consumers wanted to show their own customers that they could pass on some of this food safety assurance down the line. So it was formed because of that, and formed by a group of cereal growers at the time, and was one of the first farm assurance schemes in the world to be set up. So SQC at the time was really quite innovative, and was something that hadn't really been done before as a non-farm assurance scheme. So it was set up at that time, and then in 2007 we were renamed Scottish Quality Crops, because we wanted to include oilseed as well within the remit of our scheme. So there was a sort of wider coverage of crops and beans, field beans too. And really the scheme at the time was designed to place Scottish crops at the premium end of the UK and European markets. But it was all born out of the need for food safety enhancement, and that remains at the heart of our scheme, is dealing with food safety and making sure that what we're doing is as safe as it can be. And in 2020, we became a co-op, as I mentioned before. Really, this is to lead to better collaboration, and it goes to the heart of our ethos, is working together and making sure that there's good consensus across the industry. And we now effectively hold the baseline standards, giving customers confidence that grain is grown to a recognised standard of production and food safety, and growers are certified on farm by an independent certification body through the annual audit. And we have over 3,000 growers, which represent about 90% of the crops in Scotland.
I was going to say, yes, it's an overwhelming percentage, isn't it? And that Teresa, when you came on board in, did you say 2020?
2022 it was, actually.
2022. What were your, obviously coming in from outside, what were your sort of interpretations of the organisation then? Obviously, it just been a cooperative for a couple of years. Was there sort of any sort of light bulb ideas that you had at the time?
I would like to hope so. I mean, it was very much when I came in. I mean, of course, I say I come from Ayrshire, so West Coast, where we don't grow a huge amount of crops. So it was very much, I suppose, for me as well, a learning curve in terms of that, and also in terms of the assurance sector. That being said, though, having worked as well with National Farmers Union Scotland, I was also very aware, though, of the concerns that were coming through from farmers round about assurance. So one of the really good things was I came into the role understanding the feelings, if you want to put it that way, of farmers towards assurance. So one of the things, though, that when I came on board, we said straight away I wanted to do was actually increase the visibility of Scottish quality crops, to ensure that it wasn't just those growers who were being assured that knew what we did. It was actually about increasing that awareness right across the sector, and encouraging as well an understanding of the importance of the role that we took forward. So one of the first things when I came in, and we still actually hark back to it, it was about really actually emphasising that message around who we are, what we do, why we do it. And I think actually 4 years down the line, that's actually still the kind of ethos of where we come from around about our communications. So yeah, it's been a really interesting journey, I think, since 2022. We've certainly increased a lot of our communications, transparency in terms of just actually being more open about what we do, how standards actually are set, trying to as well explain the differences between a scheme owner such as SQC and the certification body who actually undertake the assessment and certification services, because their role actually is, it's totally independent of SQC. So the assessors that are out there, they have such an important role to play. And they are the ones who, despite not being employed by Scottish Quality Crops, a lot of the time they're the face of SQC when they're out and about on farms. So yeah, it's been a journey where we have tried to actually, I suppose, just increase awareness, increase our relationships with the farmers, be seen as well that we're an organisation that can be approached and that do listen, and that we're here to actually help rather than hinder.
How do you structure the year in terms of governance and meetings and bringing sort of your stakeholders together, cooperative members together? Because I should imagine you've got a huge resource within the group in terms of perhaps market direction or what the different component companies want to see, do you meet 2 or 3 times a year to sort of review agendas and review the assurance scheme? And over the last 3 or 4 years, have you seen a shift in direction about what the market wants in terms of assured products?
Yes, Mark, we have 3 board meetings a year, and in conjunction, we are also periodically, we review our standards, and we're actually going through a main standards review this year, which generally probably happens about every 5 years. We're tweaking them on an ongoing basis, but there's a process by which we go through on a sort of periodic basis, and I think I'll maybe let you elaborate on that, Teresa, because there is a process around that enables our members to feed into the review of standards, and there's a very visible system in place that we go through for doing this.
So, as John said, I mean, we do the way that we look at it, it's like an ongoing process, Mark. So, in terms of our standards, there will be queries that come in through the year. And I mean, as everybody knows, legislation changes, rules change, demands change, what the industry is actually looking for changes. So I guess one of our key points as well and strengths is the fact that because of our size and our structure and governance, we can be quite fluid in terms of the way we do things while still ensuring that they are being done in a manner which is always there to improve the integrity of the scheme, so to speak. But yeah, we undertake an annual standards review, which generally speaking will normally just mean some minor tweaks to the wording of the standards. However, this review this year, which we started in December, is actually what we're calling a full standards review. So it's kind of twofold. It's one side of it is actually going through all our standards to ensure that they're still fit for purpose, relevant and required. So actually that side of it is about taking out anything that's not there, or possibly again tweaking things if there is any amendments needed. The other side of it, though, has been as well identifying from the industry and the supply chain any perceived gaps in the standards. So it doesn't mean, though, that we will incorporate them. It just means, though, that we will look at what is being put forward, and if there is justification, and if we can get agreement on that, we may look at bringing in something new. But as I say, that doesn't necessarily mean it will. It is quite a lengthy and drawn out process because I guess as you'll understand, I mean, we are an accredited scheme. So if we are making major changes, we need to go out to full consultation. We've already actually, though, in the last couple of months, done that kind of pre-consultation where we held about 20 meetings with key stakeholders, representatives from the supply chain and our grower members. Just to explain the process and to invite feedback. We then have also held a meeting of our Scottish Crop Supply Chain Hub. And following it, just this week, we actually held it was a 4.5 hour meeting of the standard setting committee. So, I mean, yeah, Mark, you can imagine how long the faces were at the end of that one.
I mean, I was going to ask about that supply chain hub because that is external stakeholders, isn't it? I get the impression. So what are the messages coming back to them? How are their markets changing? Who have you got on that chain? Oh, you've got a few companies there, haven't you, John?
Mark, just going back to your question, has there been a sort of shift in the direction of travel with these standards? Undoubtedly, there's a move from safe food to a bit more environmental sustainability. Now, we'll always have food safety at the heart of our standards, and there is a big environmental sustainability landscape out there that we do touch on, so that we do incorporate Sustainable Agricultural Initiative. We are SAI Silver as part of our scheme, and a lot of that really recognises many of the things that are already done on farms. Scotland, in a global context, has a very diverse landscape, and in terms of cereal production, we operate in really quite a, a sustainable way in terms of habitats, in terms of extra land use that's on farm. So we've captured a bit of that. There is pressure to go further, but we need to make sure that there is visible value comes back to growers by pushing standards out. So we see ourselves as being a practical baseline level, and if producers need to go further, for instance, if there's a particular market, there are other schemes out there, perfectly good schemes like LEAF that take the whole environmental thing a lot further. So we have got to take a pragmatic view on how far we go with this and make sure that our baseline standards don't incorporate too many things that don't bring value back to the grower.
I mean, as a farmer, Joel, what are you and what crops are you growing? Are you growing malting barley, wheat for distilling, etc.?
Yes, we grow wheat for distilling. We grow malting barley. We uniquely we have a contract with a particular distiller, so we have a very close working relationship with one customer. One of our main crops is also oats, and we grow oats as part of a cooperative marketing group for Quaker, who have a mill in Cooper, and I chair the group of growers, 110 of us, all on a sort of single contract with them, and we grow oilseed and we grow feed barley as well.
So, as a farmer, are you seeing a shift in what the market's looking for in terms of assurance? Not necessarily, and I know there are companies like Leaf out there, and also, I mean, there are a lot of other tools that are giving metrics to farmers. You've got agriculture for sort of carbon accounting, and you've got companies like Diageo that are doing their own sort of regen program with farmers. But are you seeing the grain buyers, some of those food destinations, looking for different metrics within the assurance schemes, or is it really, like you say, we've got to be sensible and we're providing definitions for safe food?
Yes, undoubtedly, Mark, there is increasing demand from consumers to have enhanced environmental
Difficulty as well, though, I think, is around about the fact that, I mean, in terms of like farmers, and I mean, John, yourself as like an arable grower, you're already doing so much for the good in terms of the environment and biodiversity and everything else. So where does the balance actually come in there? Because it's as if sometimes you can't do enough in order to meet the demands of the market and of the customer. But do we actually talk enough about the good things that are already being done out there already on farms, and that our growers and our farmers actually are undertaking? I mean, it's one, to me, it's one sector where it's not it's definitely not a career. It's part of your lifestyle, John. I mean, this is what you do. It's what you live. It's where you live in the countryside. And I don't think sometimes we actually shout enough about the the good things that actually are already being done, because there's always so much more coming down the track.
Yes, and as I said earlier, Scotland has the most amazing diverse landscape. And if any of you have travelled in the wheat belt in Australia, for instance, or the plains of the Midwest, who are effectively our competitors, there's no comparison in terms of the level of diversity, and the natural environment is very different. So I think what our scheme does is it does capture some of that without laying on onerous conditions on growers. There's an embedded level of environmental recognition of our production systems, and it is a unique place, Scotland. Perhaps not the very best place in the world to grow cereals in the wet harvest, but in terms of our landscape, it sits right up there in terms of ecological diversity.
And very well-defined industries, in the malting sector and the distilling sector, and quite unique, really. I mean, I don't think you really appreciate it until you're embedded in Scotland. Looking up in England, you're very much ensconced in what perhaps bread making wheat, milling wheat, for example, and in the distilling and malting markets are a vehicle that you don't really get involved with, not for, you might do it for brewing, but certainly not for distilling down there. So, and I presume this sort of branding of SQC is very valuable, isn't it, to Scottish agriculture per se, in terms of quality of product and getting the message out there that what we produce is of a higher than usual standard,
And also to a standard that we should be proud of.
exactly. And how do you get that message out there? Do you feel that is that part of your strategy to do sort of more of going forward, or?
Definitely. I mean, I think it's one of those things as well that as much as assurance and audits and all that sits around about it can be seen sometimes as a burden, it does provide, though, a platform for us as an assurance scheme to be able to go out and say, our farmers are growing this fantastic product to this exacting standard, because there's our scheme, there's what they have to do, and that is what they're doing as a baseline, with many of the growers actually doing so much more on top of that. So we actually can, through what we are doing, evidence how the product has grown. And I think that's really, really critical. I'm still not convinced in terms of how we actually get that message fully out there, but I do think we need to speak up our industry a bit more.
And what it does, Mark, is it gives our growers this platform on which to build value. So the value comes from collaborating, having marketing groups, and having a contract that reflects what these groups are doing. SQC, Scottish Quality Crops, is not a marketing organisation. We are not trying to leverage value ourselves in the market. That's up to growers. It's up to groups. It's up to individual contracts. and building on our base level. But our base level is sort of set at something that's deliverable, something that's not too onerous, but captures a lot of what growers are doing, all the fantastic farming practice that goes on in the industry. And we have some very, very good farmers in Scotland. But really leveraging value from the market has to be done through collaborative marketing.
Well, that's a very good point, John. I think it's all too easy for sort of me to step in and say, "Oh, you got a brand, push it, but that's not your core. Your core business is providing that assurance and confidence in the product, I presume. Yeah. And how does we import more grain than we export, perhaps. Have you seen, since we left the EU, has that impacted how you run the organisation at all? Or do you think we're quite well insulated from imports?
Well, there is grain being imported into Scotland, and for various reasons, some of them very, very good reasons, from practical, technical reasons, but some of it is done purely on cost. And the level of assurance of imported grain is uncertain. There's a plethora of schemes out there, even within Europe. Some of them are farm-based, some of them are co-op-based, and there is a lot of uncertainty. What SQC does is it gives certainty. All of our growers conform to this uniform standard, and in theory, any customer buying grain that is SQC assured can pick up the phone and arrange through permission from the grower to go and see the farm. There's that visibility, there's that traceability all the way back. Imported grain does not have that level of certainty that SQC can provide.
Well, yeah. I remember sort of, things like combinable beans, often go to North African countries, don't they? And I presume that sort of assurance level when you are trying to target sort of niche export markets is valuable.
Yes, the other way around for grain and oilseeds being exported out of Scotland, we have a scheme that recognises the requirements, and in particular the Renewable Energy Directive, which is a European-led requirement that oilseeds in particular can conform to the biofuel market, and that it has been embedded in our scheme. Teresa has done a lot of work in this over the years to navigate the sort of European mumbo jumbo, can I say that? And all the sort of technical hurdles that they put in our place. But we're still navigating through that, and our Scottish Quality Crops Assurance Scheme enables our oilseed to access the European biofuel market. So that is an example of how our scheme conforms.
Just off the back as well of what John was saying there, though, and about the work that has gone into it, it's one of these really tricky ones, because a lot of the time when you're exporting grain, it's very difficult to quantify how much is actually going out, and specifically from Scotland. Your merchants, your buyers have contracts overseas, they need to meet them. So it's not as simple as just going, oh, okay, Joe Blogs up the road is growing oilseed rape, that every grain is going into the European biofuels market. You can't actually say that. And that does create a difficulty for us, because at what point do we say this amount of work is too much work for us to sustain the incorporation of the renewable energy requirements into the SQC scheme? But if we don't have it within the scheme, and if we were to lose our recognition, it would mean that all our growers would lose the opportunity to access that market. So at the moment, as much as not everybody does, it still is an opportunity that is there for them. And that's one of the kind of like key areas of our strategy. It's not just about what assurance provides just now, it's about as well the opportunities and the doors that it can open up. So we need to keep the access to as many markets as we possibly can. But it's been a long route, and especially the difficulty has been since the UK left Europe. It has created for this industry a difficulty in meeting the European requirements, because they're now asking different things of us. And whereas before, our national accredited scheme, UCAS, was recognised, because they are now no longer classed as within a member state, we may have to seek additional accreditation from a European country. And I mean, that to me just doesn't make sense, because I mean, surely to goodness, it should be about that open markets and being able to trade wherever we are, so long as the grain is assured. And yeah, it's been a really tricky 4 years trying to actually keep.
Is that Renewable Energy Directive a vehicle by which we're allowed to send product into Europe?
Yes. Across in Europe, the market's actually done slightly differently, because they have independent renewable energy directive schemes. It's one of the benefits of us actually having it within our own standards through SQC, is that it reduces the costs. I mean, when we actually did a wee bit of work on this previously, and for those having to undertake RED audits, well, it's an additional visit to the farm that has to be undertaken. It's an additional audit that has to be undertaken, and it would be an additional cost that would have to be paid by the farmer. Whereas at the moment, it sits within the standards. It's a market that's open to all assured growers.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good example of the work you're doing to support and open up new markets as an insurance scheme. It's been great talking to you. Thanks for coming on the podcast. Should we wrap up and perhaps a takeaway message for listeners in terms of what you guys with SQC would like to impart?
Don, can I give one, and maybe you could give one then?
Perfect, Teresa. Yes.
Okay, the one I would send, and we'll maybe actually open up, mind you, a whole discussion on its own on this, is the fact that assurance in Scottish quality crops might not be the most popular, and it might not be, I suppose, as well, the dare I say, sexiest topic to discuss. But what would the assurance sector look like without SQC, and what actually would replace us if we weren't here? Because it's going to be needed. As you said, Mark, demands continue to rise. Without SQC here to undertake that, what would happen?
Yes, our assurance scheme is run cooperatively with significant farmer involvement in all decisions that are being made, and we are here to help, not hinder.
Yeah. And I was really just doing some background research about you. Really encouraged to see such a wide scope of organisations involved in the sort of direction of travel. It's got to be a good thing. Thank you both for joining me, and I wish you both the best. Thanks for joining us for this episode of Cropcast Conversations. If you enjoyed listening to this episode, you may enjoy some of our other farm advisory service podcasts. This podcast was presented by me, Mark Boucher-Gibbs, produced by Heather Stewart, edited by Cameron Waugh, with executive producers Kirsten Blackwood and Kerry Hammond. Come back next time for more Cropcast Conversations.
The Farm Advisory Service Podcast. Audio advice on livestock, crops and soils, environment, rural business, and more. Brought to you in association with the Scottish Government.